Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Go the Distance podcast series. My name is Sadie, and you can find my social media links at milehighradio.com/go-the-distance. Today, I'm going to start by sharing a couple of comments that I received from the last episode through Facebook, and then I will be talking about some strategies for dealing with my depression. So, the comments that I received back were that this one says, Sadie, I love that you're shining the light into the corners. This is the same person who made the comment about it last time. This would be such a good talk for those high school students who struggle with so much internally. And I wanted to touch on that because I used to be that student, that high school student who was struggling to handle life and to have the skills I needed to feel happy despite what was going on. And so, yeah, if anyone wants to, feel free to share this with people you think it will benefit. Another comment that I got from a friend, it's from Stephanie. It says, totally agree with you about working our lives away. Now that I'm on maternity leave, I can't imagine going back to work like I used to. I actually can't believe I spent 12 years of my life working for someone else. And I'm dreading August 2018. I suppose I have 9 months to figure that out. So this is a common thread that, you know, we all kind of go through. We all have this need to work and to do things, but none of us really want to. And I don't know, it just, that makes it hard to want to keep going and working for someone else when that person's not even necessarily going to care about you or your life. All they want is their benefit and their reason for doing what they're doing to be fulfilled. And I guess that's how power and control works. You end up with people who have resources and things they need way up here, and then as they, I don't know, create systems to achieve their goal using their resources, they sort of lose touch on, I'm sure the first, like their close family and friends who they work with, these kind of people probably care about them, but then as you get further away from that like little circle that you're in, then it becomes less how do I say that? Becomes easier to not care because it doesn't affect you or influence you. Oops, got to move my mic closer. All right, so those are my two comments that I got on the last video. What I want to talk about is not having control on situations that evoke strong feelings. That's what I really consider to be the root of my depression, and I have a hard time not knowing how to react or what to do when I have these sad thoughts about things I can't control. It's easy to get emotionally invested in situations that you hear about or that you see about, but it's not easy to make a difference or to change those situations, because as a middle-class person, we're all just hamsters on the wheel running the race of life, trying to keep our head above water and trying to keep our families going and thinking about the future generation and how you want to leave behind something that provides a foot up for your family to come, as opposed to starting back to where you started. And so for me, growing up in a 3-bedroom apartment with a family of 6, I want to be able to have a big enough house for my children to each have their own bedroom or to each have their own space. And I want to be able to afford to send my kids to hockey or swimming or anything like that, because growing up we couldn't afford those things, so we found entertainment in spending time with each other and making up our own games. And we'd still play like games and stuff like that. It just wasn't in an organized fashion. It was just with each other in our own yard, as opposed to, you know, signing up for a team and being a part of a group that way. So for me, I'd like to be able to have those things for my children, and so that's why I like to, I don't know where I was going with that. Just started going, I guess. So that's why no, I totally lost it. Okay, anyways, my next point, since I don't know where I was going with that, sometimes my mind will become preoccupied with problem-solving situations I have no control over. So that kind of goes back to that point I was making before, how those emotions become the root of my depression. I try to think of ways to get around the lack of control and to make the situation better, but it's not even to come up with that type of a solution sometimes is not in my control. So I tend to spend a lot of time thinking about these things, but it doesn't really necessarily get me anywhere, because it's out of my control, and sometimes you just really can't do anything about it. And it's easy to get stuck and think like, oh, but if I just do it this, or if I just try it this way, or if I just try one more time, maybe I can, you know, get that person to quit their addiction, or to take better care of themselves, or whatever the problem is that you're worrying about. And I don't really want to have to say this, or want to say this, but the world is a pretty sad place for many humans right now, and some countries are being torn apart by war and poverty, and it's really like, it makes me so sad, because here in Canada we have peace and we have wealth and we have a place for everyone, and we treat people with respect. And I mean, I'm not saying we're perfect here in Canada or anything like that. We all have our problems, and just in Canada we have first world problems, which aren't really problems. Like, oh my goodness, I don't have the next best phone, or I, you know, don't have the best car in the world. But hey, at least I have a car, and at least I have a phone, because there's people in the world who don't even have a meal to put on their plates at dinner time, and they go hungry. I think the part that makes me sad about the world right now, is that there's people who are willing to literally do anything to achieve their goal, and they forget to take the time to consider the impact that they're having on people who are involved in the situation. The saddest part for me is they straight up do not care. Some people hurt others, know they're hurting others, and they still don't care. For me, I have to beg the question of what has happened to that person who's so unwilling to see the influence that they're having on other people and the hurt that they're causing. What's happened to that person to get them to that place where they just really don't care? How has life treated them, and how have others treated them to get to that point? And I just wish that people would wake up and be like, hey, I'm here and I am influencing other people, whether I like it or not. My choices, my actions, my words, they all have an influence on the people who hear them or are exposed to them. And it's so easy just to become selfish in our thoughts and our ways, and oh, that's it's all about me, and I'm just saying how I feel and these kinds of thoughts, but we don't think about how the person on the receiving end of that might be feeling, and it makes it hard to think about, because I can't imagine hurting people the way some people do, and just being okay with myself after that. Like, I can't imagine that, and I wish that I could help everyone see things that way. So when I find myself slipping into sadness about what I cannot control, I have to catch myself and start thinking about things in a more positive way. So if I notice that I'm, getting a little bit upset or depressed or sad about something, and I've spent enough time on it, and then I have to be like, okay, again, I have no control here. There's nothing I can do at this point. I've had my time to think about it, and now I need to move on, because it's easy to get so stuck in those negative cycles, and you just get kind of like stuck in the tornado of thoughts, and they just keep dragging you down, and that's when you have to take a step back out of the storm, out of the tornado, and just take a look and say, like, oh wow, I've really like gone too far this time. I've really like for me, when I get depressed, I just kind of sit in the same spot and I don't really do anything, and I just like think about whatever it is that I'm feeling depressed about. And it's really important to find a way to break yourself out of that, and to give yourself thought patterns that give you a different perspective, or a different way of looking at things. Sometimes for me, this looks like going for a walk and listening to music, or getting out my drawing book. I know I've talked about this a lot in previous episodes, but another thing too is just calling up a friend, or going out for coffee, or to the movies, finding some sort of way to distract yourself from the depression that you're facing, because ultimately there's always going to be things to be depressed about and things to be sad about. Part of life is hard for everyone, and it doesn't ever get like always easy for anyone. There's always that roller coaster of ups and downs and emotions and things that happen. I mean, part of life is death, so that's one thing that like we just can't avoid. And of course there's depression when there's death involved, and so finding ways to cope with these things that will happen, no matter how much positivity you put into your life, or no matter how much you try to make those things, not affect you, they're still gonna happen. And having effective coping mechanisms and strategies to help you through those times is what is really important. And it really does take a conscious effort to change the way you think. And there's always going to be times where you make mistakes, or you're unable to stay positive, as I was saying. But that's just a part of it. There's always those ups and downs. And when you have the downs, how are you going to bring yourself back up again? It's kind of, if you think about it, it's a little bit like addiction, and relapse is a part of it. So having negative, depressing, anxious thoughts will always happen from time to time. And when you work really hard to avoid those things, it can feel crushing. It can feel like you've lost everything you've worked for, when you suddenly start going back into those old habits and those old ways. But the thing is, nothing can take away the fact that you've already put in all that work. And by allowing yourself forgiveness for having that fall, or that, that mistake or relapse, it provides yourself with some sanity that, hey, I can work really hard, and I can take that one step backwards and then go 5 more steps forward afterwards, instead of just taking that step back and then falling there in that place and not really moving forward again because of the disappointment. So stress is actually an addicting chemical release in your body, and it can become a problem for people, so much so that people will subconsciously set themselves up for stressful situations. So I was reading a lot about this, and I identify with this a lot. Excuse me. And I do actually tend to do this. And I wasn't aware of it before, but when I finally kind of clued into it, I was like, I am totally setting myself up for failure. And it's like, whoa, how did I not notice this? How did I let this happen? There's actually a proper name for it, and I guess that's another thing I should really look up. But subconsciously, the brain will cause you to say, like, leave something to the last minute, or forget something, or not communicate an important message that you need to communicate. And then that stressful situation that happens afterward, that aftermath of someone's upset with you, or you don't have what you need, so you get really mad at yourself, and you have a big upset moment, and that rush that you get from that negative situation becomes addicting, and the body and the brain start looking for ways to make that happen. So it's really important to find a way to do that in a positive way. So instead of letting your subconscious set you up for negative experiences that cause more negative thinking and more depression, try to set yourself up for something exciting or positive. So setting out a little reward for yourself if you meet your goal, or if you if you're able to achieve something that you've been working towards. Excuse me. If you're able to achieve something that you're working towards, having yourself set up for a rush of feelings in a positive way, that promotes positive health and positive mental health, because you're still getting that good feeling, for some reason that stressful feeling is considered good in the brain, the negative sort of aspect of it. But if you do so in a positive way, then you're still getting that, I put in quotations, high feeling, where your brain gets something. And I know I keep saying this, but it is so important that we all have activities and hobbies and interests that occupy ourselves in order to be happy, because if you're constantly occupied with things that don't truly work for you or give you that good feeling, then what's stopping you from going back into that negative cycle? I tend to enjoy having a variety of different interests at any given time, because I get bored easily and I like change. I like to be doing something different all the time, but some people are very routine based and have if they feel good having the same things to do at the same times every day or every week. But what really matters most is finding what works for you. If an activity that you're choosing to be a part of is not working for you, then make a change, try something new. I'm a strong believer in having purpose, and if something no longer serves a purpose for you, then why continue subjecting yourself to it? So if you one thing I always think about is how, like, waitresses and wait staff and kitchen staff, a lot of them will literally take up smoking just so they can have a break, because otherwise they don't get breaks. And then, so for me, like, say someone started smoking because they were a waitress and then they've moved on and got a job somewhere else. Well, they're still smoking, but they're not doing it to get a break. They're just doing it because it became a habit or became a part of who they were. So in my mind, needing that cigarette for a break is no longer serving that purpose. So why keep doing it? Um, Another great way to combat depression is something I mentioned in the last episode, and it's having goals for yourself. I talked about goals and in the context of working out, but you can set goals for yourself in anything you want. And it's really important to make sure that your goals are achievable and easy enough that they don't become a part of the stress that you're trying to avoid. Just having that sense of achievement and that sense of accomplishment makes a big difference in your mental health and your outlook on life and how things appear for you. So that's where I'm going to end it for today. Thanks again for listening in, and shout out again to Mile High Radio and Lynn Burnett. Thanks so much for this opportunity and for getting this set up for me. I really, really appreciate it. So yeah, thanks again, and we'll see you next time.